Let's begin by offering our respects to the founder Acharya of ISKCON, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.
Om Agyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataru Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, we welcome all of you to our weekly Bhagavad Gita classes. We have with us here today Rajiv Kumar, Ayush, Dipti Adnani, Disha Melwani, Deepa, Jagrati, Karuna Jadwani, Lal and Mehek Melwani. Then we have Lavanya, Manju, Mehek Bakshani, we have Venkatchari, we have Auntie Neeta, Pavani, my parents are there. Then we have Ranjit Das, Ritu Lalwani and Shivani. Okay. Do we have any questions from the previous class?
I had, but you answered it already. You shared the details, so it was good.
Okay, so you're convinced.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. So what did we see in the previous class? From which verse to which verse did we see? How many verses did we complete? Does anybody have the slides? We saw from 30 to 34.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, so in verse 30, Krishna spoke about how we have to work. We have to work by surrendering all our works to him. Only then we can be free from the karmic reaction. So we have to understand the law of karma, how it works is, if I do 50 good deeds and 50 bad deeds, it does not mean that the good and bad are negated. So plus 50 minus 50, now it's 0. So now I'm free from karma. It doesn't work like that. If I have 50 good deeds and 50 bad deeds, then I have to enjoy those 50 good deeds. For that, I have to take birth again to enjoy those 50 good deeds. And I have to take birth again to suffer the 50 bad deeds. So, and okay, let's say I do 50 good and 50 bad and I take birth again and I've already enjoyed the 50 good and suffered for the 50 bad. So now everything is finished. Now my karma is 0. Now I can go back to the spiritual world. Still I cannot. Why? Because meanwhile I took birth again to enjoy the 50 good and suffer the 50 bad. Again, I've done more activities. So like this, the cycle will continue on and on and on. So how are we going to bring it to 0? How are we going to bring our karma to 0? Only when we give the results to Krishna. Only then there is no reaction to the action. As long as we are acting, there is going to be some reaction. And as long as there is reaction, there is going to be repeated birth and death. So that's why Krishna here is talking about. This is the highest philosophy Krishna is talking here. Surrendering all your works unto me. So when we work like that, then there will be no reaction. And that's how we will be free from the bondage of fruitive activities. Then Krishna, here in 31, Krishna gives us what will happen if we follow these injunctions. Krishna says, if we follow this instruction of his, that we surrender all our works to him, then we become free from the bondage of activities. But if we do not follow those instructions, then what is the result of that? Then Krishna says that such people are bereft of all knowledge. They are befooled. And all their endeavors for perfection are ruined, because we cannot attain perfection until we surrender to the Lord. Because perfection in material world is impossible, because this material world, the nature of the material world is like that. The nature of the material world is that it will cause us distress. So how much ever we try to make ourselves comfortable in this material world, we are not going to be successful. Then Krishna talks very important point here. He says that repression cannot accomplish anything. So Krishna is talking about working according to our nature. He's talking about don't repress yourself. But here we discussed here that we should not misunderstand this verse. We should not think that, oh, Krishna is talking about don't repress yourself. So I'm free to do any sinful activity. I'm free to engage in meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. No, that's not what Krishna is talking about here. Here, Krishna is talking about repressing your nature. Each one of us has a certain nature. And if we act according to our nature, then we will be happy. Like we discussed how Brahmanas has a certain nature, Kshatriyas have a certain nature, Vaishyas and Shudras, each of us has a certain nature. Some of us are very good at administration. Some of us are very good at protection. Some of us are very good at education. Some of us may make very good teachers. Some of us are very good at rendering services. Some people are experts, and you give them an instruction and they will execute the instruction to perfection. But they are not good at giving instructions. So probably they cannot make good businessmen, but they can work for some other businessman, and they can excel in that. So like that, we all have certain natures, and Krishna is saying you act according to your nature. And that's the reason why previously you would see that a Brahmana would be expected to work as a Brahmana, a Kshatriya would be expected to work as a Kshatriya. Here Arjuna, he's a Kshatriya, but he's trying to act like a Brahmana, because he's talking about renunciation. He's saying, I don't want to fight, I'm ready to go to the forest, I'm ready to live like a beggar. But that's not Arjuna's nature. Arjuna by nature is a Kshatriya. So this is Arjuna's fault, that he's trying to act against his nature. So Krishna is saying repression will not accomplish anything. Then Krishna is talking about regulating attachment and aversion, raga and dvesha. Why we have to regulate raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion, is because these are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. We gave this example of how rules and regulations in our Shastra help us overcome attachment and aversion. What example we saw? We said that when there is Ekadasi, for example, if somebody is very much attached to eating grains, somebody loves to eat rice, wheat, bread, but there is an Ekadasi. So then Ekadasi helps us to overcome that attachment to grain, because once in 15 days, I don't eat any grains. And aversion, if I'm in the temple, it's an Ekadasi and they serve quinoa and I hate quinoa. I have an aversion for quinoa. But because I'm in the temple they serve me that prasad, then I just accept the prasad and I. So that way I can overcome the aversion. So this is how our rules and regulations help us overcome attachment and aversion. And we have to overcome this because that's how we can progress in our spiritual life. So on that note, we stop today onwards. We will see from verse number 35. Who can read today? We need one volunteer to read, please.
You want me
Shri
to,
Radhe
Mataji? Yes, if you like, I can.
Oh, yes.
Will have if they want to read, then they can all read.
Okay, you can read for us today. Thank you, Mataji. Let's hear the shloka.
श्रेयान् स्वधर्मो विगुणः परधर्मा स्वनुष्ठिता स्वधर्मे निधनं श्रेयः परधर्मो भयावहः.
It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duty perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty. Distraction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Hare Krishna.
So see what Krishna is saying here. He's saying that it is better to do your own prescribed duty, even faultily, than doing another's duty perfectly. For example, if one is a Kshatriya, it's better that he does the duty of a Kshatriya even imperfectly than to do the work of a Brahmana, for example, perfectly. Why? Why do you think so? Because this is something that we need to think about. Why should a Kshatriya better do his duty even though he does it imperfectly, rather than do the duty of another Varna to perfection? Why? What's the problem?
Krishna made all these designations where he's made somebody Vaishya, someone Kshatriya, someone Brahmin, someone Shudra, and he has these departments and he is giving instruction for us to follow it. Otherwise, we'll fall down, because if we cannot follow our own duty and we leave that, and let's say we are a Kshatriya and we leave our Kshatriyapana and we do Brahman's duty and we become a Brahman and we follow Brahman. Kshatriya is like they need violence sometimes. So, and Brahman, they're very calm and they don't do violence so much. And so if a Kshatriya goes and become a Brahman, or a Brahman goes become a Kshatriya, it would not suit them, their nature, and it if they cannot obey their own designation that Krishna has appointed in the family that they're born in, then how can they carry out another's duty professionally and rightly? It is not so. It's like Arjun is a Kshatriya, but let's say if Arjun decides to become a Brahmin, then Krishna will never approve it, nor he will never approve it, but he will not be able to do it rightly,
He
because
will not be
he
able
was
to do
born
it
as a
rightly. Yeah. So what
yeah,
will
because he
happen?
cannot satisfy his own.
What I think,
Yes.
Ataji, so if everybody do their work, society functions well. Otherwise, there'll be chaos in the society. If we cross over to different workers, job, there will be chaos in the society. There will be no order in the society.
There will
That's
be
why-
chaos in the society. Yes, very nice. There will be no order in society. Very nice.
I have one.
Yes.
Because the Kshatriyas were trained to be Kshatriyas, not Brahmanas.
Okay. So what will happen if a Brahmana does the work of a Kshatriya or a Kshatriya does the work of a Brahmana? Will that person be happy, first of all?
No. And
Because
also
it's going against your own nature. Remember, it's going against your own nature. So when you do something that is according to your nature, first of all, that makes you happy. Okay, that's one point, one very important point. 2, it will cause chaos in the society. And 3, it will not pay off in the long run. Now let's take an example from the Mahabharata. Now Dronacharya is a Brahman or a Kshatriya?
Brahmacharya.
Brahman.
He's a Brahmana, isn't it? But did he fight the war?
Yes.
He fought the war. Now who actually fights the war? Brahmanas or Kshatriyas?
Kshatriyas.
Kshatriyas.
Okay. Now what happened to Dronacharya? Now Dronacharya is by nature a Brahman because of his because he was employed by Hastinapur. No, he's an employee of Hastinapur. He had to fight. Circumstantially, he was obligated to fight that war. Now, when Dronacharya got the news that his son has been killed, of course, he was not killed, but it was a plot to stop him from fighting because they were not able to defeat Dronacharya. So when Dronacharya received the news that his son Ashwadhama has been killed, what did he do? Immediately he put down his arms and he said, I cannot fight. He was so overwhelmed with emotions upon hearing the news of the death of his son that he put his arms down and he said that I will not fight. And that's how he was killed, because he put down his arms. Eventually he was killed. Now a Kshatriya actually will never put his arms down, because by nature a Kshatriya will never do that. See, Arjuna also received the news of the death of his son, Abhimanyu. But did Arjuna stop fighting after he received the news of his son? Even Arjuna was attached, emotionally attached, and he was also very shaken when he received the news of the death of his son. But what did Arjuna do? He fought with all the more determination the next day. He was determined to kill the person who was responsible for the death of his son. Okay, so Arjuna, because his nature is that of a Kshatriya, when he received the news of his son, he was fighting. He went all out to fight the next day of the war. But when Dronacharya received the death of his son, he said, I'm not going to fight anymore. But a Kshatriya never puts his arms down. So you can see how, because Dronacharya went against his nature of a Brahman and fought the war, eventually he was defeated, because by nature he's a Brahmana. So like this, each one should act according to his nature. And that's the reason why if somebody is not qualified to receive knowledge, he was not admitted in a Gurukul. So nowadays, people who don't have this proper knowledge, they say that why everybody has a right to be educated. Why was somebody denied entrance? Like why did Dronacharya deny Ekalavya? Why did Dronacharya deny Karna? But the system previously was like this, that only those who are qualified, those who have that nature, only a Kshatriya and a Brahmana were trained up on how to use these arms, how to use weapons. Why would a Shudra be given this knowledge of how to use a weapon? Because it's not required. It's not needed. What is he going to use it for? It's not needed. It's not necessary. Just as how...
Sorry.
What's that?
It can be dangerous for the society as well. If you don't know how to have knowledge, right? So it will chaos.
Exactly. Yes, it will be dangerous for society because he will misuse the weapons. Just as how not the government doesn't train everybody how to use an AK-47. Not everybody is trained up on how to make bombs. Not everybody is trained up on how to shoot. Why? Because only it's not required for a civilian. unless a person has joined the army, navy, or any defense forces, where it is going to be required in a war-like situation, those people are trained up. In those schools, they are given this education. So this is why Krishna is saying that do not do your own, follow your own duty according to your own nature. Don't try to do somebody else's duty. So each one of us has certain prescribed duties, not only in the Varna, but every, men have certain prescribed duties, women have certain prescribed duties, children have certain prescribed duties. So we should do our own prescribed duties, and then there will be smooth functioning of the society. Destruction in the course of performing one's duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. This is what we just discussed, no? But Krishna is saying that when you follow another's path, that is a very, very dangerous situation. So now we come to the last section of this chapter, where Arjuna is asking a very, very crucial question, very, very important question, which all of us ask at some point or the other in our lives. So let's see what is Arjuna's question.
Arjuna uvacha atha kena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya baladiva niyojitaha.
Arjun said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force?
So what is Arjuna's question? Arjuna is saying that what is it that forces one to do sinful acts? Forces one even though unwillingly. So which means that one does not want to do that sinful act, but still one is forced to act that way. So there is something that is forcing one to do. So Arjuna is saying, I don't want to do it. See what knowledge Krishna is giving to Arjuna. Arjuna already has learned all that in the Gurukula. Arjuna has already learned that I am not the body, I am spirit soul. Arjuna has already has learned that I am a Kshatriya, and as a Kshatriya, my duty is to fight. All this, it's not that Arjuna has not learned in the Gurukula, but still Arjuna, out of his miserly weakness, he is not able to do his duty of fighting. So this is what is Arjuna's situation. He is impelled, he is forced to not fight, although unwillingly. So Arjuna is saying, what is that reason that one is forced to act? One is forced to engage in sinful activity, even though he does not want to do it. So as though he is engaged by force. So what is this thing that is forcing us to perform these activities, even though we don't want to perform those activities? It's a very, 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 very valid question. Each one of us goes through this in our life. So what makes us do things we know aren't good for us is Arjuna's question. Most of us have probably asked ourselves this question after a binge of overeating, excessive shopping, or excessive net surfing. Sometimes we surf the internet for so long, although we don't want to do it. Let's say we are working on an important project, or a student is studying for his exam, and suddenly there is something that pops up on the screen as you're studying, and then you get distracted, and then you start watching that video, or you start watching that ad, and then one video leads to another video, and very soon you know that I have spent 1 hour of my time watching just nonsense, and I wasted my precious time. I should have studied, I should have worked on my project. So we have all gone through this. So although unwillingly, we don't want to waste our time, we want to focus on our studies, we want to focus on our project, we want to focus on what we are doing, but we are getting distracted, and then it's as though something is forcing us to do something else that is not necessary. So the fact that Arjuna is asking this very similar question that we have asked ourselves speak about the universal relevance of the Bhagavad Gita. That's why Bhagavad Gita is a book that is valid across all age groups. It's valid across all the yugas, all time periods. It's not that it's something of the past and it is only valid for Arjuna because he was in a battlefield, but it does not apply to us because we are not fighting any Kurukshetra war. No, we are all fighting our own battles in our own life. So Bhagavad Gita is a universal book. It's a universal truth that stands the test of time. It is across all time, all place, and all circumstances. It is not something that's only for the Indians or only those who are born in India or only for the Hindus. No, it is for all nationalities, all religions, all creed. You will not see the word Hindu even once in the entire Bhagavad Gita. So one should not think that this is a Hindu book or only for Indians or only for somebody who's in a warlike situation. It's a universal truth. See, when would we act against our own self-interest? This is Arjuna's question. What is forcing me to do something, although I know that it is not good for me? So one situation could be when we are forced to do it by an external enemy. If, say, somebody is having us at gunpoint and making us say, okay, I want you to shoot, and he has a gun on our head. So you can say that an external enemy is forcing us to do it, threatening us to do it. Or somebody has tricked us to do it. We have been cheated and tricked to, or somebody has brainwashed us to perform a sinful activity. But if there is no such external enemy, nobody is forcing us to do it, nobody has tricked us to do it, then what could be the other option? Probably there is an internal enemy that is forcing us to act against our own self-interest. Let us see what is Krishna's answer to this crucial question.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kamayesha Krodhayesha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidhyena Miha Vairinam.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said it is lust only, Arjun, which is born from contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world, lust.
So Krishna is saying that it is lust. It is lust which makes us or forces us to act even though it is harmful for us. So see, there are many points here. Now, what is Krishna saying? First of all, he is saying that lust is the greatest enemy, Vairinam. Vairina means enemy. So Krishna is saying that lust is the greatest enemy, our internal enemy. And he's calling it Maha-ashana and Maha-papma. See, Maha-ashana and Maha-papma. Maha-ashana means it is all devouring. And Maha-papma means it is greatly sinful. How can it, what do you mean by all devouring? It consumes you completely. It completely covers your consciousness. It completely covers your intelligence. You know what is right and what is wrong, but still lust forces you to do that which is wrong for you. So it completely covers your intelligence, just as how Arjuna's intelligence was completely covered when he saw the relatives, his relatives on the opposite side. When Arjuna told Krishna, take me to the middle of the battlefield, and he saw his relatives on the opposite side. Now he knows what is right and what is wrong. He knows what is his duty as a Kshatriya. He knows that these people are actually on the wrong side. They are actually supporting Duryodhan, who is very, very sinful. But instead of focusing on that, his intelligence is covered, and he got overwhelmed with emotions for his teacher and for his great-grandfather Bhishma Dev, isn't it? So lust is all devouring, and it is greatly sinful, and it is your greatest enemy. Now, what is Krishna saying here? It is lust, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion. So we have discussed the three modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So this lust comes from the mode of passion. And then he says it is later transformed into wrath or anger. When does lust transform into anger? Does anybody remember?
When it's unfulfilled, when the desire is not fulfilled, like the attachment is not fulfilled, so it becomes wrath.
Yes, exactly. Very nice. So when the lust is not fulfilled, then it leads to anger. Let's see. So here, continuing this, is if there is no external enemy, there may be an internal enemy. And yes, indeed, there is an internal enemy, that is lust, Krishna is saying. Now, first of all, let us try to understand how does this question apply to Arjuna. So Krishna uses the word kama. Kama is lust. So one should understand that in general, I mean, this word lust does not always only mean sexual desire. This is what people usually think it means. Specific meaning of kam is sexual desire. Even across Shastra, most of the time this word is used to indicate sexual desire. Kam, lust. But generally, it can refer to any desire that has grown so disproportionately as to become destructive. So the desire of Arjuna that grew so disproportionately to become destructive was what? In context of Arjuna was his desire for the safety of his relatives and his attachment to them. So this is how this question and Krishna's answer to Arjuna's question is valid. If karma is taken to mean sexual activity, no such desire was impelling Arjuna to fight destructively on the battlefield. So it's not that Arjuna had lusty desires. And it's not that these lusty desires are coming in the way of Arjuna fighting the war. It's not that Arjuna is thinking about some lover or some other woman, and that's why he's not able to fight. No, that was not the case with Arjuna. Karma can also mean any desire that has grown so disproportionately as to become destructive. With this broader meaning, karma can refer to Arjuna's desire for his relatives' safety and his attachment to them. This attachment has covered his knowledge, obscuring his vision of right and wrong. So it's not that he does not have this knowledge. He has the knowledge, but the knowledge has been covered because of that lust of his to protect his relatives. Impelling him, it has also deviated him from his Kshatriya duty, impelling him on a course of action that would lead to infamy. So it was going to make him infamous for all the future generations in the world and hell in the next. Because if he fails in his duty, then only hell is awaiting him in the next lifetime. So this is how we have to understand how this question and Krishna's answer applies to Arjuna. So lust has two outcomes. Either lust can be satisfied. Oh Lord, this. Okay, so either lust can be satisfied or lust will not be satisfied. If lust is not satisfied, then it leads to anger because we think that, oh, how come I'm not able to satisfy this desire of mine? So it leads to anger. This anger is one letter short of danger because whenever we react, when we are angry, it always brings us unfavorable results. And this anger is coming from the mode of passion. So therefore, anger will lead to fall down. But what if lust is satisfied? Then what happens? If we have this great lusty desire to become the most powerful person in the country, and we become probably the richest man, or we become the president, or we become the CEO of the biggest multinational organization. So let's say my lust is satisfied.
It takes us
then what
to a
happens?
different level. It takes us to greed.
It leads to greed. Why does it lead to greed?
Because when lust is satisfied, you want more and more and more, and that's what greed is.
Yes, you want more and more and more, so it leads to, that greed leads to more lust, isn't it? So this is a never-ending cycle. Actually, lust can never be satisfied because we want more and more, and that will lead to more lust. So we are in this vicious cycle. We are in this vicious cycle that never ends. Therefore, Krishna is saying that lust is your greatest enemy. Remember this 8th stage trajectory to tragedy, which we discussed in chapter 2, how contemplation leads to attraction, that leads to lust. Lust leads to anger. From anger comes delusion, bewilderment of memory, loss of intelligence, and ultimate fall down. We discussed this in chapter 2, and we saw how this perfectly applies to the story of Ajamila. So lust is something that we need to overcome. See, in chapter 16, Krishna says that there are 3 gates leading to hell. What are they? Lust, anger, and greed. These are the 3 gateways to hell, Krishna says. So when lust is not satisfied, it leads to anger. And when lust is satisfied, it leads to greed, it leads to more lust. So in one sense of term, lust is never satisfied. So therefore, it leads to the degradation of the soul. Let's see what Krishna says next.
धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निर्यथादर्शो मलेन च यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भः तथा तेनेदमावृतम्.
As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust.
So Krishna here is describing the different degrees of this lust. See, Krishna has already answered. Arjuna said, what is it that is forcing me to act even unwillingly? Krishna has already said lust. But Krishna doesn't stop at that. Krishna goes on to explain in greater detail. And he'll also tell us about how we can overcome this lust. Okay. So now what is Krishna saying? He's talking about the different degrees of lust. There are different degrees of lust. And he's giving 3 examples. First example is fire is covered by smoke. Then second example, mirror is covered by the dust. Third example, embryo is covered by the womb. So like this, the consciousness is covered in different degrees by lust. Now the thinnest covering is fire covered by smoke. Even though there may be smoke covering the fire, still there is light. And still there is heat that emanates through the smoke. So that smoke is not that thick a covering. Now mirror is covered by the dust. Here the covering is a little more thicker than the previous covering. Because if the mirror is covered by dust, then we cannot see our reflection in the mirror. We cannot see it. So the mirror is not able to fulfill its purpose of giving us the reflection. But that dust can be easily removed from the mirror. So this is a little more thicker than the previous covering of the smoke covering the fire. And the third and the thickest covering is the embryo covered in the womb. When the child in the womb, the child that's covered, the child that is in the womb, that has the thickest covering. There the consciousness is fully covered. Now for a human being, which of these 3 examples apply? Fire is covered by the smoke, mirror is covered by the dust, or embryo is covered by the womb. For a human being, the first one applies, where fire is covered by the smoke, because a human being can come out or overcome this covering. Okay. How? By okay, let's wait for Krishna to tell us how we can overcome the covering. Krishna will reveal it later. But for a human being, it's possible. It's possible to overcome this covering and regain our pure consciousness. Okay. Now, mirror is covered by the dust. That is for the animals. For the animals, the consciousness is more covered. If you call an animal for a Bhagavad Gita class and ask him to sit in front of the computer for 90 minutes, he is not going to be able to do it. Why? Because the consciousness of an animal is covered more than the consciousness of a human being is covered. And the thickest covering is that of the trees and the plants, the living entities who cannot move. The consciousness of the trees is covered most. Because if you attack an animal, the animal knows how to defend, or the animal knows how to run away, or the animal will go and look for a shelter, or the animal can avoid a dangerous situation. An animal can sense a dangerous situation and he will move to a place of safety. But a tree or a plant cannot even do that. If there is fire, the animal will know how to run away from the fire. But a plant or tree will not be able to even run away. The plant or tree has to remain over there. So the consciousness is most covered for the tree. So these are the different layers or different grades of covering. So this is how the consciousness is covered for the different living entities. Fire covered by smoke, mirror covered by dust, embryo covered by the womb. See here. Human beings is this example, fire and smoke. For the animals, it's this example, dust in the mirror, and the child in the womb is for the plants. So the covering here is super thick and penetrable only after long effort. But for us, it is very thin and penetrable. So we have to do what it takes to overcome this covering. 39.
आवृतं ज्ञानमेतेन ज्ञानिनो नित्यवैरिणा कामरूपेण कौन्तेय दुष्पूरेणानलेन च.
Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his internal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire.
See, what is Krishna saying here? He is talking about Nitya Vairina. Nitya Vairina means he is calling about the eternal enemy. So previously he said that this is our enemy, lust is our Vairina enemy, but here Krishna is using the word Nitya Vairina. It's the eternal enemy. How? It covers the consciousness of even the jnanis, even somebody who's very, very knowledgeable, one who's intelligent. Also, his consciousness can be covered by lust. Krishna is saying one example of a person who was very, very knowledgeable, who had the knowledge of all the Shastras, but was not able to overcome his lust was
Bharat Maharaj?
Bharat
Ravan?
Maharaj.
Ravan?
Ravan, yes, Ravan is a very, very prominent example. Now, Ravan was very knowledgeable in scriptures. He knew the Shastras. He was expert at composing. He even composed the Shiv Tandava Stotram, which is not easy to compose such literature. So he composed that also. And he was very, very knowledgeable, but he was not able to overcome lust. He was not able to overcome his lust for women. And he kidnapped Sita. He separated Lakshmi from Narayan, and then he had to pay the price for it. So that's what Krishna is saying here, that lust, this eternal enemy lust, can even cover the consciousness of a wise living entity, even of a jnani. It is so dangerous, so dangerous. And then what does Krishna say? He says, lust is never satisfied. It is never satisfied. So don't think that if I have the lust to let's say I have the lust to, or I have the temptation to eat meat. So let me engage in the meat eating, and then the day will come when I'll get fed up and frustrated of meat eating, and then I'll be able to give up meat eating. That will not happen. That will not happen. Lust is never satisfied. Some religious paths, they actually preach this. Do whatever you want to do, and then you'll come to the point of saturation. Then you'll reach the saturation level, and then you will not want to do it anymore. But that's not going to happen. Krishna says lust is never satisfied, and it burns like fire. The more you feed lust, the more it will burn. So it is vicious as well as voracious. Previously, we saw Krishna saying that it is vicious and it is also voracious. It can never be satisfied. Lust doesn't just bind us, it also makes us fight to hold on to its bond. So lust is something, see, for example, somebody is bound by a rope. Now, what do you expect a person who's bound by a rope to naturally do? He will want to untie the rope, right? He will want to untie the rope and be free. That is natural. But if a person who's bound by ropes is actually fighting to stay bound, even if he's bound and somebody else also tries to unbind him and he gets angry, why are you untying my rope? I want to continue to be bound. If he's fighting to remain bound, then you will think this person is crazy. He has completely lost it, isn't it? But lust, if we hold on to lust, then it is equal to us holding on to that which is binding us. So therefore, we should not hold on to these lusty desires. We should work to fight against lust, fight to remove these ropes that are binding us.
Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhishthanamuchyate etair vimohayatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam.
The senses, the mind, The intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him.
See, when we know that somebody is an enemy and we have to fight this enemy, what information we need to have? We need to know where this enemy is situated. Only then we can fight the enemy, isn't it? So Krishna doesn't just stop at explaining that your enemy is lust. Krishna goes on to explain where is this enemy situated, because we need to know where our enemy is in order to fight our enemy. So what is he saying? He's saying that this lust is situated where? In the senses, in the mind, and in the intelligence. So these are the strategic positions where our enemy is located. See this diagram here. The soul is covered by mind, intelligence, and false ego, which we discussed are the subtle body. The soul is first covered with a subtle body, and then it is covered with the gross body. The gross body is earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So these are the coverings of the soul. So this lust is actually situated in our subtle body. It's actually situated in our subtle body. So it is like the next door neighbor of the soul. It is the next door neighbor of the soul. So if your enemy is external, you can fight. But if your enemy is if your very bodyguard is your enemy, then that is a very, very dangerous situation. If an external person is your enemy, then you can hire bodyguards. You can have a security system to protect you. But if your very bodyguard is your enemy, just imagine how dangerous that situation is. He doesn't have to breach any security system, right? He can easily attack you. He can easily shoot you down. So therefore, this lust is actually right there. It's your next door neighbor who's situated. So what we need to do, we have to recover the soul from these coverings. We have to recover the soul from these coverings, because we attain this gross and subtle body only when we leave the spiritual world. The minute we leave the spiritual world, we are covered by the subtle body and the gross body. So what we need to do, we have to recover this soul. We don't have to recover this soul, because when death occurs, the soul leaves the body, leaves the gross body along with the subtle body, and then takes on another gross body. So what we are doing, if we don't surrender to Krishna, if we don't follow spiritual practices, if we don't follow the instructions of Krishna, then we are again and again recovering the soul over and over again with another gross body. We need to recover the soul. We should not recover the soul. That is intelligence. Now, how to fight lust is what Krishna is going to explain. How to attack this enemy is what Krishna explains next.
Tasmat tvamindriyanyado niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajahihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam.
Therefore, O Arjun, best of the Bhartas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slay the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization.
So what is Krishna saying? First of all, he's saying that curb this in the very beginning itself. Nip the evil in the bud. Don't let it, don't engage in it more and more and more and postpone it for later. For Krishna is saying, first of all, you curb it in the very beginning itself, right? The sooner you do it, the better it is for you. And then how to curb? Krishna is saying by regulating the senses, regulating the senses. Now we know that in 33, in the previous class, verse 33, we saw Krishna talk about repression is futile. He says, do not repress. Then now he is talking about regulation. So one may say, one who does not receive this knowledge from a bona fide source, one who does not understand this from the spiritual master, he can easily misunderstand, right? He can misunderstand and he can say that there is a contradiction. How come previously Krishna says that do not repress yourself, and then in 41 he says that you have to regulate yourself, because this appears to be contradictory. So is there a contradiction here? We have to understand that these are two assertions. These two statements are meant for two distinctly different facets of our inner world. Now there are two things inside us. What are they? One is our psychophysical nature, and the other is impurities. So what we should not repress is our psychophysical nature. What nature we have, we act, as we discussed, each one of us has a certain nature, and we should not repress our nature. But yes, we need to repress, or we need to regulate the impurities which we have accumulated inside us. So lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, and illusion, these are the 6 enemies of the living entities, and these need to be regulated. These cannot be indulged in. Okay, the more we indulge in lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, and illusion, the more it is going to harm us, and it is going to even disturb the society. So we should understand that there is no contradiction in these two statements of Krishna. So what are these regulative principles? No meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. So why do we have to follow these 4 principles? What is the connection between this and dharma? See, there are 4 pillars of dharma, 4 pillars of religion. What are they? Truth, austerity, cleanliness, and mercy. Satyam, tapa, shaucham, and daya. Now religion is standing on these 4 pillars. If any one of these 4 pillars are removed, then religion is not going to be standing that firmly. Just like how for a table you need the 4 legs, isn't it? So which of these regulative principles will break the pillar of honesty or satyam?
Oh, gambling.
Yes, gambling. Which regulative principle, which of these sinful activities will break the pillar of austerity, self-discipline?
The illicit sex
Okay, anybody else wants to
or
try?
the intoxication.
Intoxication, okay. And which of these principles, which of the sinful activity breaks the pillar of cleanliness?
I think the meat eating, tapasya or something.
Okay, are the others present in the class or everybody is absent?
Socham.
Illicit sex will
Illicit
break
sex
the
breaks
pillar
the pillar of
Saucham.
Shaucham, yes, very nice. And mercy?
Meat eating.
Yes, meat eating.
Cruelty to animals.
Yes, yes. So because we have to hold these 4 pillars of religion, therefore we should not engage in these 4 activities. When we engage in these 4 activities, they actually break these 4 pillars of religion. So this is the connection between these 4 regulative principles and the pillars of religion. So here we have what is broken by what activity. So let temptation trigger an alarm bell, not a welcome tune. So see, we may be, as we discussed previously, we may be working on a project or we may be studying, and there is a temptation, there is a pop-up screen, some ad is there, or when very attractive video has come up. So when this thing comes up, we should not welcome it. We should not indulge in it. We have to see it as an alarm bell, see it as something that's dangerous. So let it trigger an alarm bell, not a welcome tune. That's why Krishna is saying that you have to curb it in the beginning itself. See it as an alarm bell, something that's bringing in danger. Don't welcome it into your life. Don't let it occupy your time, your mind, and the space in your in whatever you're doing. Do not add fuel to a dying fire and then complain about running out of water. See, this is what Krishna is saying here, no? Was it here? See here, Krishna says, lust is never satisfied and burns like fire, burns like fire. So do not add fuel to the fire and then complain about running out of water and then say that, oh, I'm not able to do this. I'm not able to overcome. I don't have the time. Sometimes people say, no, I don't have the time to go to the temple. I don't have the time to chant the rounds. But we have the time to watch. We can spend 3 hours watching a movie very easily, but we cannot spend 10 minutes chanting one round. So do not add fuel to the dying fire. The more we indulge in these activities, the more we indulge in lusty activities, the more it will burn like fire. (42)
Indriyani paranyahur Indriyebhyah param manah Manasastu para buddhir Yo buddhehe paratastu saha.
The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and the soul is even higher than the intelligence.
So here Krishna is giving a hierarchy. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Here dull matter refers to the gross body, earth, water, fire, air and ether. Higher than dull matter, Krishna says, are the senses. Why senses are higher than dull matter? Because the senses are the means by which we can give an outlet to our lusty desires, right? If one has lusty desires, then the senses are the different outlet for those activities. Therefore, the senses are superior to dull matter. But higher than the senses is the mind. Now, in order to engage our senses, we need to actually do the activity. But the mind is higher than the senses because even though we may be in a situation where we cannot engage our senses in a particular activity, but mentally we can engage in that activity. Mentally, by dreaming or by fantasizing, the mind can fulfill that lusty desire just by fantasizing. So therefore, mind is higher than the senses. But higher than the mind is intelligence, which we have discussed previously. No, higher than the mind is the intelligence, because we can control, we can curb the mind by using our intelligence. When we use our intelligence and we realize that, okay, this is good, this is bad. Now let's gross example. No, we know, let's say, when we go to bed at night, we want to have a clean kitchen. But mind will say, it's okay, I'll wash the dirty dishes tomorrow in the morning. I don't want to wash it at night. So mind will tell us that which is not the right thing to do. But then we stop, we think, and intelligence tells us, no, anyway, these dishes have to be washed. It's better I wash them now rather than come tomorrow early morning and come across a dirty kitchen, which is better. So like that, intelligence is higher than the mind. The higher than intelligence is, of course, the soul, because the soul is the one that provides consciousness to the subtle body and to the gross body. If the soul is absent, then the body is a dead body. So it is the soul that is giving consciousness, right? And higher than the soul, of course, is the super soul, is the Lord himself. So this is the hierarchy that Krishna is giving in this verse. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than intelligence. And of course, we know that higher than the soul is the super soul. The mind may be a drinker, but the intelligence doesn't have to be a bartender. The mind may tell me, I want to drink. I'm in a party. I want to look cool. I want to appear that I enjoy life. It's a status symbol for me to drink. But intelligence, I use my intelligence and it tells me that no, drinking is against the regulative principles. drinking is not good for my spiritual well-being. It is not even good for my physical well-being. It is not even good for my material well-being. It harms my health. So then we use our intelligence. So intelligence doesn't have to be a bartender. Intelligence does not have to provide you everything that the mind wants. Use your intelligence and do the right thing. Don't allow your intelligence to be covered by the mind.
एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे कर्मयोगो नाम तृतीयोऽध्यायः।
Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. O mighty arm Arjun, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer his insatiable enemy known as lust.
So previously, what did Krishna say? See, Krishna is giving two solutions to overcome lust. Previously, what did he say? By regulation. Now, what is he saying? He's saying that use the strength of your trained intelligence. Knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. So you have to understand your position. What is your position? Your position is that you are eternally the servant of God. Okay, so that is your position. You are transcendental. You are a part and parcel of the Lord. The Lord is completely pure. So therefore, you are also pure. You are also Sat, Chit, Ananda. Just like the Lord is eternal, full of knowledge and always blissful, the soul also is Sat, Chit, Ananda. So we should understand that we are also parts and parcels of the Lord, and we are not meant to be enjoying independently from God. We should not try to enjoy independently. We should enjoy with Him. Now, enjoying with God means enjoying with Him in His abode, or enjoying by aligning our desires with the desire of the Lord. Even if we are in the material world, if we align our happiness with that of the Lord, then everything will be peaceful. Everything, we can overcome lust. We can conquer this greatest enemy called lust. So we have to identify what is our real position. So what is Krishna saying? Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. So use the strength of your trained intelligence, and then you can conquer this insatiable enemy called lust, Krishna is saying. So there are two solutions. One is external and one is internal. Externally, you regulate the senses. No meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. And internally, you realize, you come to that, use the strength of that knowledge, that what is your real position, that you are the servant of the Lord. You are part and parcel of the Lord, and eternally you are part and parcel of the Lord. So don't try to enjoy independent of Krishna. You can never enjoy independent of Krishna, because you are away. You have lost the connection with God the Father. Just as how you take a fish out of water. When you take a fish out of water, you give the fish nice food to eat, you give the fish nice clothes, you give a fish a nice palatial building to live. Is the fish going to be happy? No. All that the fish wants is, the fish just wants to go back into the water. That's it. That's the only thing that will keep the fish happy. So the only thing that is going to keep us happy is to establish or to re-establish our lost connection with Krishna. So internally to realize this position, and externally by regulative principles. These are the two solutions that Krishna is giving to overcome lust. When Arjuna asks what makes us act self-destructively, Krishna doesn't just identify the inner self-destructive force lust. He is not only telling Arjuna, okay, what is it? It is lust. Krishna doesn't stop there. See, sensing Arjuna's unspoken concern in asking that question, he compassionately explains how lust deludes us and how we can counter it. Significantly, Krishna doesn't reduce lust to desire alone. He expands it, also including a covering that obscures knowledge and misdirects desire. So lust even covers our intelligence. It obstructs our knowledge. This is what happened with Arjuna. No, he had the knowledge. He has learned all this in the Gurukul. Whatever Krishna is telling him, he has already learned in the Gurukul. But still, his intelligence, his knowledge, everything was covered. How does this covering delude us? By making us believe that temporary sensations coming from temporarily attractive objects will provide us immense pleasure. So it makes us believe that we can get pleasure, but it will not. It is only an illusion. So what to do? What is the solution? Krishna just does not tell us this is the problem. He also tells us how to come out of the problem. To overcome such delusion, Krishna recommends a two-pronged strategy. What is that? Outer regulation. By keeping ourselves at a safe distance from sense objects, we can avoid two terrible troubles: indulging in them impulsively or indiscriminately, and being tempted and tormented by them unnecessarily and uncontrollably. So we are tempted and also tormented. We give into temptations of meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. And also we are tormented. It troubles us. It troubles us. It affects us. It affects our physical health. It affects our mental health, right? It does not give us satisfaction. And it is unnecessary and uncontrollably. We cannot even control. The more we indulge in it, the more we lose control. Then, second solution, inner redirection. We need to intelligently situate ourselves in our spiritual identity and therein relish non-material fulfillment. To relish such joy, we need to ultimately direct our love toward the all-attractive divinity, Krishna. So this is Krishna's solution to this problem. Now coming to Arjuna. How is this going to help Arjuna? Sensual regulation. Arjuna's senses, particularly his eyes, got him into trouble. So which of Arjuna's senses got him into trouble? The eyes. He was ready to fight but lost his will when he went to the middle of the battlefield and saw his relatives from there. To do his duty of fighting, he needed to regulate his senses, focusing them less on who his opponents were and more on whose side they had chosen. So Arjuna he was misdirected by his sense of vision, right? His eyes misdirected because he was focusing on who is there on the opposite. He's seeing that I can see my teacher, I can see my grandfather. Instead, he should have focused on Duryodhan. Whom are they standing with? They are standing with the evil Duryodhan. That should have been Arjuna's focus. Then, second solution, intellectually sustained spiritual vision. Krishna's Gita message was precisely meant for this purpose. It empowered his intelligence with the conviction that the war would not actually kill his relatives, for they were essentially spiritual beings. Moreover, dying on the battlefield would be actually good for those elders he was most concerned about. Bhishma and Drona would be freed from their circumstantial obligations to fight on the side of the evil Duryodhan. So see how actually Krishna opens Arjuna's eyes, how they would actually be benefited, because Bhishma and Drona were not fighting with Duryodhan because they wanted to or they liked Duryodhan, because circumstances were such that they were obliged to fight in favor of Duryodhan. And because they had done many good deeds, they would be elevated to an auspicious destination post-death. So when death occurs, they would get an upgrade because they had done good deeds. So this is how Krishna is solving this problem for Arjuna, and he's also solving the problem for us, inner and outer solutions he's giving us. So with that, we come to the end of this chapter. You can read the chapter summaries when I share the slides in the group. So by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, we come to the end of chapter number 3. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. So, any questions?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Jagrati.
Mataji, you told that the subtle body also goes with the soul, right? I thought only soul will travel from one body to other. Can you explain more about that?
Okay, so when death happens, if the soul is taking another material body, then the subtle body accompanies the soul. The subtle body completely dissolves only when the soul enters the spiritual world. As long as we are in the material world, the subtle body accompanies the soul. That's why the mind, intelligence, and false ego still continues. That's why our nature, see, if we the impressions that our mind has at the time of death is carried on to the next body as well, because the mind is still there. The subtle body is still carried on to the new body.
Okay, so I don't really know how does this work. So if mind is dissolved when we go to the higher
To the
celestial
spiritual world.
worlds, or yeah, so if we don't have mind and intelligence and we don't remember who we are, what is the point of going?
Okay, so we don't have material mind and intelligence because subtle body is material. What we have when we enter the spiritual world is a spiritual body.
Okay.
So the soul is completely spiritual. It is Satchitananda. So we have a spiritual body. We don't have a material body when we go to the spiritual world. This subtle body is still material.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mataji.
You're welcome.
Mataji, you said that when we give up our subtle body, like we enter the spiritual world, the subtle body falls ego, intelligence, mind, right? And so how do we give up that? Like now we are in a body and we have this subtle body and we're doing spiritual activities. So we give up all these when the senses purify or the heart purifies. Now it's begin to purify completely and then it's given up like that.
No, it dissolves at death. When death occurs, the subtle body and the gross body are still there as long as we are in this material world. When death occurs and the soul leaves the gross body, if we are completely purified, then even the subtle body will dissolve and then only the soul goes to the material world.
Oh, so our test is death. When that occurs, that is our test. If we will shift on to the material body again or go to the spiritual world.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any other questions?
Mataji, one more question. If the mind, intelligence, and false ego is traveling with us, why can't we remember the past life activities?
Yeah, in some cases, as an exceptional rule, some people may remember their past life. But mostly we do not remember our past life, but we carry the karma. We carry the karma. So why we cannot remember is because that's a special mercy of the Lord that he makes us forget. Why he makes us forget is because if we remember our past life, imagine we have issues maintaining our relationships in this life itself, your husband, your children, and somebody tells you that I am your wife from the previous life. I am your son from the previous life. So you have to take care of me also. We will go crazy, isn't it?
Right.
So it is the Lord's actually special mercy. It is the great favor that he's giving us by not making us remember our past life. But the impressions sometimes are there. The impressions are still there. Sometimes we feel a connection. Sometimes unnecessarily we may have a fear. For example, somebody may have a fear of water. And it is unexplained. Why do we fear water? There is no reason why we should fear water, but it is coming from the past life. So the impressions are there in the mind because we are carrying the mind from the previous body.
Yeah, but Mataji, last week in the story that you said, that lizard was trapped in the well. So he remembered his past life. That's why he was there, right? So how come he remembered his past
life? So that's an exceptional case. Mostly we don't remember, but exceptional cases we remember. Now the lizard, why the lizard was allowed to remember the past life is also a mercy of the Lord because he did so much punya. He did so much charity. Remember, he gave so many cows in charity, gold plated and very good quality. So because he did so much punya, the Lord allowed him to remember his previous life. And why he allowed him to remember his previous life? Because that way, in that lizard body, he was meditating on Krishna. So he got benefited and he got the association of Krishna. So that was also the Lord's arrangement to remember. Because he did that punya. Okay. So as an exceptional case, sometimes we may be allowed to remember. But the general rule is we don't remember.
And maybe he was a demigod or something. Then
No, he
only-
was not a demigod. He was a king who did a lot of punya.
Okay.
Then he went back to his heaven because he had to enjoy also. No, remember Brahma told him that either you can enjoy or you can suffer. What you want to do first? So first he chose to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
In that also he think, let me suffer first, then I can enjoy. In that also he was thinking that let me enjoy. No, so his mentality was I want to enjoy. That was his faulty thinking of that king. He should have actually chosen to enjoy first, but he chose to suffer first. It's because he wants to enjoy nicely later. Right? Okay. What else?
One small question, excuse me, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
When you said in the past life you don't remember, but how certain you are, like one will get the same form? Because there's something that you say that 84 crore or million until you get back to your human form.
Yeah, you cannot be sure about that because again, there are exceptions depending on how much you have surrendered. If you have surrendered even a little bit, I mean, if you started your devotional life even a little bit in the human body, then human body is guaranteed because you carry on from where you left off. And in the animal's body, you cannot carry on with your devotional life. Yes. But if you go down to animal, then there are 8,400,000 different species and you're just transmigrating one after the other after that. Like, you know, mechanically, you're just going from one body to another body, 8 million, you're just transmigrating through the different bodies. And we know that from the Bhagavatam.
Exactly. That's the thing, because there's no certainty that you will have the same form of existence which you had in your previous life. No?
Yeah, you may or may not have, not necessarily yes or not necessarily no. It depends on many, many complex factors.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
But human life can be guaranteed if you begin your devotional service. That's the most important asset is this human body, because this human body is the only way by which you can do devotional service. So at least we don't, even if we can't say, our aim should be to attain perfection in this lifetime itself. Srila Prabhupada said, don't wait for more lifetimes because it's going to get more and more. As Kali Yuga advances, it is going to get more and more difficult. And it's going to get more, and the circumstances are going to get worse and worse and worse. So better not to wait for more lifetime, better to work towards attaining perfection in this lifetime. But if for any reason we are not able to attain perfection, but we at least start off our devotional life, then human life is guaranteed in the next body. So that the only way you can ensure that you get a human body is by beginning your devotional life in this lifetime itself. That's the way you can ensure to get a human body.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. So anyone who has ever chanted Hare Krishna even once, half a second or a minute, so that proves that devotional service, devotional life is started?
Yes. Chanting Hare Krishna is knowingly, even somebody does unknowingly devotional service, just somebody has eaten prasad unknowingly, that is also counted as devotional service. If you have just traveled to a dham, if you even slept in a dham like Sridham Mayapur, you get spiritual credit. Even unknowingly what you do, Agyata Sukriti, even that means you have started off your devotional life. Very
Thank
potent.
you, Mataji.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What else? Okay, so one more week before we close the exam for chapter number 3. Next week, Krishna willing, we will start with chapter number 4, titled Transcendental Knowledge. Now, see, all these last verses where Krishna is speaking about strengthening your, you know what is your position On the strength of your position, you can overcome lust. So how do we know what is our position? How do we know that we are parts and parcels of Krishna? How do we know that? We know it through transcendental knowledge. So that's what connects chapter 3 and chapter 4. Chapter 4 is titled Transcendental Knowledge. So that we will see in the next week, if Krishna so sanctions. Until then, have a good week in Krishna consciousness. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.